Yeah, I like to mention there that I dabbled in real estate, but really it was just kind of bought my first rental house maybe about 10 years ago, and really kind of learned as I went there. And this world of real estate development is, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking getting into it. I think I blame Fayette Alliance for inspiring me there, but I don't know if it was a midlife crisis or if it was just the idea of wanting to do something a little bit different. But I really think it just came about from finding the site. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing. I think people come about this in many different ways, but I was scrolling Facebook, as many people do, and I think it was on Facebook Marketplace. I came across this parcel of land, and it had a Quonset hut on it, which is kind of a military-style structure. But I saw that and was familiar with where Delaware was, having lived just the other side of the train tracks there, and just kind of thought, okay, I think there's something we can do here. I know this location, and I think that there is, having learned about what infill could be and some of the opportunities that we have in this city, it just kind of led me to immerse myself fully down this path of what an infill redevelopment could be. And I love everything that Stan was saying here tonight, and I think it does serve. It's very inspirational to see like what we can do on these sites, and I'm hopeful that what I can show is with one acre, someone who doesn't really know much about this, like what can I do and what can I share about my experience. And let me also say, this thing isn't built yet. We haven't broken ground yet. So it's maybe a little bit early to be up here talking about it. But hey, if I can share anything that may be remotely helpful, then I'm happy to do that, because there's a lot of you in this room who I came to for advice, and I appreciate that everyone's done for me, and I'm more than happy to pass that along. So why am I doing this? I think, as the intro mentioned, I had worked in corporate marketing for 10 years and had really had enough of figuring out how to market fast food Italian. Sorry, Fazoli's, but I was kind of, I think I'd kind of reached my limit there. And I love Lexington. As you may tell from my accent, I'm not originally from here. I'm originally from England, and moved from here from the UK to Lexington, and yeah, it was fell in love immediately after coming to visit here, marrying a girl who had been at Transylvania and had family here. So I had an obvious connection to Lexington, but didn't realize how much it was going to become part of my identity, and just such a wonderful place. I moved to the Kenwick neighborhood in 2019, and before that I had been living downtown, and I loved being able to walk and being able to go to the coffee shops and be able to walk to the breweries, and that became a big part of my social life, and the connection with friends was really important to me, and I felt that if there was a chance that I could do something else like this, if I could potentially build housing and give other people opportunity to live in these great neighborhoods that I think people were being priced out of, then that was something that I was wanting to achieve in this. And Yeah, I just thought, I think I know I have the skills to do this, and I'm just going to try and figure it out. And if it didn't work out, and if it doesn't work out, well, I still can try and start again and try something else. But it felt like a good time in my life to try something different, and it felt like if I was going to do this thing right and do something that felt like it was going to be the right thing for Lexington, then I felt like it was going to succeed. So we'll see if that ends up coming true. But so this is the site as I purchased it back in November of 2023. As you can see, there was this was the Quonset hut, which had been there since 1940, and a lot of storage buildings and just kind of sheds. There's a big thing of tires right here and some oil staining, and yeah, it really wasn't a very attractive site. And I remember the realtor who took me to see this place. He honestly thought I was crazy. The fact that I wanted to see this place, and the fact that I was even interested in it. But I saw an opportunity. I saw this was an acre of land next to Pasta Garage and Paradise Cycles and JOI Kitchen, and felt like, this was a prime spot to do something and improve the site. So was able to convince a bank to lend me the money to buy this. It took a lot of convincing. They didn't like the the state of the site, but yeah, I thought the site had a great history. I really loved what that area had, how important that part of town had been for the growth of Lexington, from the industrial side of things, with the Netherland yard that was on the site, and the fact that next door was a former passenger rail station where the church is. But I saw a few opportunities, and one thing I did prior to purchasing the site was I sat down with some of the folks from the planning department, and I think that was extremely helpful to have that conversation up front and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this. What can I do here? And just have that open discussion. And they were extremely helpful and provided me with some great insights. And it was really through that we kind of identified this adaptive reuse opportunity. And that was thankfully due to the work that Pasta Garage and Clay Ingalls had done to be able to apply for the adaptive reuse overlay, which had allowed Pasta Garage to be open as a restaurant. And what we found was that we could add on to that, and it was going to be a much less invasive process than a zone change. And trying to do this thing myself and trying to really keep down costs, I felt like I needed to have some certainty that I could actually do this thing. And the idea of having to hire a lawyer and spend thousands on legal fees just to even get to the chance that we could maybe do this thing felt that felt like it would have been a larger barrier to overcome. So we found out that we could apply for the adaptive reuse, and if we were going to meet the necessary criteria, which was kind of a list of items that we could score points for, and if we essentially scored enough points, then that case was presented to the Planning Commission, and through the planning process, we could get this thing approved. And knowing that was huge. Just knowing the fact that planning were behind us, and in theory supported this what we were trying to do was extremely helpful. And yeah, I think it gave me the confidence then to be able to seek investment on this project, knowing that, okay, we're going to be able to do this. This thing actually can be done. So this was what was inside the Quonset hut. So spent many weeks there trying to clear that out and clear out all the junk. And but just to give you an idea of what we're talking about on a site like this, it was abandoned. It was just trying to, just in a really bad shape. And you can see now maybe why the banks weren't too keen once I got them in here to see it. But one thing that I knew we would have to overcome on this would be the conditions of the site, as it was former industrial I-1 land that had a history of automotive repair, and it was just going to get complicated. I realized as we started having conversations with banks, it was one of the first things that they brought up. So rather than kind of bury my head in the sand and move on without and say, oh, it'll be fine, we'll figure it out, I realized that this is going to be a big part of doing this. If we're going to develop this site, we're going to do it the right way. Thankfully, there was working with the Kentucky Department of Energy and Environment and the EPA, we were able to get a grant to cover the cost of the phase 2, which was really helpful. That meant going onto the site, hiring geologists to come and take borings throughout the site and assess the soil. All those kinds of things that you don't necessarily think about when you're trying to develop a site. But again, going back to what Stan touched on in terms of doing development, in those early days, being able to access any type of grant funding or low interest loans or anything like that was extremely helpful just to try and get this to become like a viable project. And that was something that I'd started from the very beginning, which was, if I can keep my costs as low as possible on this, if I can try and do as much work on my end as possible, then the overall project will cost less. And therefore, I will, when it comes time to the construction loan, I won't need to ask for as much, which means then the rent won't have to be as high. So being able to keep on top of those costs from the very beginning was extremely important. It's very easy in these early days just to spend money, and I tried to kind of run this very lean from the very beginning. So thankfully, thankfully we were able to work with the EPA and we got all that done and we put the land through the brownfield program, which essentially meant, yes, there was, if there was any contamination that had been done, that wasn't on us, and we were going to make a plan to deal with that. And so what I just wanted to show is that, yes, it's great finding these infill sites, former industrial land, but we have to accept that there is a history on these sites, and if this was 100 years of industrial use, and it's going to potentially lead to some issues, but we're handling it and moving forward. So some people may think, well, you've got this great structure here, why didn't you keep this? And I have had that question asked many times. And to be honest, I did think about it early on. I thought, well, it is kind of cool, and it does have some history to it. But then again, these Quonset huts weren't meant to be permanent buildings. They were for military use, and they were often erected to serve a purpose. And I felt like the time had come for the Quonset hut, and it was rusted, and I had some folks come take a look at it, and it was time for it to go. So was able to do a barter, and some folks came out and took it down and took it off site. So I was happy at least to be able to save it from the scrapyard. And it hasn't been put up yet, but I'm very keen to see what happens next. So once we got the site cleared out and a lot of the buildings removed and sold, this is kind of what we ended up with. As you can see, we've got Kenwick back behind over there, the church on the left, Clay Ingalls, Paradise Cycles, past the garage. So it felt like a great street to be able to do something on. So then it became thinking through, okay, what do we do? What can we do on this site? You know, slightly awkward shape as these infill, redevelopment sites often are. This had been, at some point, probably about 6 different parcels that had been consolidated. I think it was something different was happening in the back than was happening in the front many years ago. So that was something that we knew would be kind of weird to work with. We had a strange layout there. But I think the most important part of this was, okay, so we've got the land, great. We can figure out what we're going to do with that. We didn't want to just put up an industrial building. That didn't feel very, I didn't feel like it was really solving a need. And it felt like, yeah, okay, we need housing. This is what everyone says in Lexington. We need more housing. We need more affordable housing. Okay, so does this site make sense for that? Went down the path of the low-income housing tax credit, learned more about that, learned about how complicated that is, and really how those sites and those developers, it's kind of like the learning curve for that is even more. And typically those are done on sites larger than 1 acre. And it felt like that wasn't the right application and wasn't the right process, because it was going to take even longer. And but it was fascinating to learn about, and something I would definitely like to consider in the future, going through those programs. But it felt like what we needed to do here was more of a conventional construction loan product with and supplementing that with as much additional funding sources as possible. So the first thing we were able to apply for and get was the stormwater incentive grant, knowing that we wanted to be extremely sustainable with how we were handling the site, and the Division of Water Quality has a program for that. So that was really, really helpful to be able to kind of get the ball rolling and be awarded that funding. And then Lexington have their affordable housing fund, and that felt like a really good place that we could apply for that money, and we could still do what we wanted in terms of be able to have a good balance. I looked at what Phil Hollerbeck and Community Ventures had done at the Met, and that felt like a really good example of infill development. That was on a bigger site, but I thought, well, can we do something like that? Something kind of scaled down, but something that's market rate, that has affordability as well. So that was kind of always in the back of my mind was, okay, if we can get the stormwater grant, if we can get the affordable housing fund, and then also it's being talked about today, it's now known as the infill infrastructure fund. So kind of combining those pools of money, and it gave me something to then go to investors and saying, okay, I've got the land, we're going to get this money, and we're going to get the loan, and I just need a little bit more, and that kind of thing, and kind of got to work on that, and just spent 6 months networking, meeting folks from all over town, and trying to build some relationships and figure out who maybe who may support a program like this, who also, who is looking to get involved and do something like this that's a little bit different, and then also who makes sense to be involved in this project and who wants to work on this. And I see Mike over there. Thanks a lot. He's been a great help, great consultant on the project, and we brought on a good team of architects and landscape architects, and having some folks who have some experience in that field with infill development has been really helpful. But it was kind of, my approach to this was kind of go small, be very thoughtful, make very careful decisions throughout, I think it's got us to a good spot right now where the project is got some good momentum and is moving in the right direction. So this was just kind of the beginning of thinking through, okay, we've got this awkward site, we've got parking spaces, what could we do here? So I had spent a lot of time looking at what had been done in infill sites in other places. We haven't, we've seen all different kinds of things happen in Lexington on infill sites, but also what's being done in suburbs of Atlanta, or what's been done in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And there's some really cool examples and some folks who are really leading the field of what seems to be kind of a really efficient style of housing, which is this 3-story garden-style walk-up. So it's each building, you could consider that to be a 12-plex. So 4 units on each level, 3 stories. And that was kind of the concept, was if we didn't need to do elevators, if we could keep this, the buildings wood frame, so really try and create a product that was more similar to housing than it was to commercial development. And if we did that, could this come in at a low enough price that would be feasible? I don't know if you all know this, but a lot of development right now just isn't penciling out. Like, the numbers just don't make sense with where interest rates are and with where construction costs are. So I knew we needed to be creative here. So the combination of a lean development team, doing a lot of the work myself, doing a very efficient style of construction, and partnered with the city and some of the state funds, if we packaged all that up, could this may just actually have a chance of working? And as it currently stands, I'm still hoping for a yes. So, so it's a 1-acre brownfield site. One thing I didn't mention was that given the fact that we already had a motorcycle shop that is going to have a bar in the front, we've got pasta garage, which is a huge source of vibrancy for the street, and JY Kitchen. So it felt like we had this little district happening here, this little area, so the thought was, why don't we try and make those ground floor buildings mixed use, so we could kind of add to that and really fill that acre site at the very front, at least, with additional commercial. And where we landed on that was each building, the front 2, have a 1,500 square foot commercial space, which I'm hopeful could be something like a yoga studio or a coffee shop. So those types of spaces, I think, could be really cool, and could also be amenities for the residents. So where we landed on this was as I mentioned, we had the 2 ground floor commercial spaces. So we ended up lose a couple of rental units, but we do end up with 32 mainly 1-bedrooms, and they're about 700 to 800 square feet each. And 12 of those would be affordable at the up to the 80% AMI. So 20 of those would be at a market rate. And it probably wasn't clear on the site, but we were able to get 29 parking spaces on the site. It was always one of these things that we were talking about was, is there enough parking? But I think when we're very close to a bus line. We've got, but we're going to do bike racks on site. We're going to have some parking spaces that are kind of more short term. But really, with this being kind of on the edge of downtown, it felt like we could push this a little bit and keep our parking relatively light. I didn't want to not do it for the sake of that. So what we're talking about is kind of similar to how Kenwick Table have a deal with the church next door, kind of potentially use the parking for the commercial spaces. This is kind of how the development plan came together. There's a lot going on there, but it was really these three buildings here. But what I think will be really unique about this and really cool is just this courtyard area between the two front buildings. I think will be really unique. Often in these garden style spaces, you see they're kind of very parking centric, and we didn't want that. We wanted to kind of have the parking in the back, put it out of the way, and make the buildings really feel part of Delaware. And what we also did is at the very front, the building goes down to 2 stories, just so it doesn't kind of tower over the street so much. But yeah, I think we worked so hard on this to get this to a point where it felt like we were incorporating a lot of what the city wanted to see, but we were also creating something that we felt people would really love to live. And we were able to include some amenities like a dog park, a community garden, and some open space. And there's some of the things I just touched on. Yeah, the dog park, bike racks. We're going to tie it into the kind of industrial nature of the street. So it felt like it would make sense for the building to match the existing materials and make it feel like it fits there. So there's lots of concrete block buildings and metal. So that's kind of the focus, to try and make it feel industrial and simple, durable, and livable. This is kind of how we currently have the front of the development looking, with the downstairs commercial, and the Railyard is really is kind of what we're calling it, and kind of tying into and kind of paying respect to the rail history of Delaware and Netherland Yard, and the cool story that there is to tell. And I also just want to highlight this because I think this will be really cool, and I can't wait to be sitting in there drinking a coffee, and hopefully you all will come visit and join us too. So what I have learned is it is an incredible journey of development that I'm still in, and I've learned a lot, and I feel like now I have to do another one just because I've learned so much, So if you see any good sites, just hit me up. And the importance of the right team. I feel really lucky to have met some great people, and to be working among some very talented folks, and also too, I mean, the Lexington development community and business community in general has just embraced this, and lots of the folks who are doing a lot of the development in town, they have been more than happy to discuss this and offer insight, and I really, really appreciate that. We definitely shouldn't take for granted the welcoming and kind of the hospitality of this industry, because without that, I wouldn't have been able to get it this far. So the fact that these folks just, they think, I'll sit down with them and talk to them, and who knows if this goes anywhere, but it's been really cool just to follow back up with some of those folks and say, hey, I'm doing this. So the importance of the local policy and the funding tools. So again, as I've mentioned, without the city incentives, it would have been impossible, I would say, to have made this make sense financially to be a viable project. So I would say to the council members here in the room, thanks. And if we can keep that in mind for future budgets, because I think the developers all feel the same way, and I don't think a lot of the folks are tapping into that. So I think that I'm hoping to raise more awareness and share with people that these things do exist, and hopefully it will encourage other folks to say, well, if he can do it, then I can do it too. So I think that there's, just like I've been inspired by other people, I'd like to see, things like this are extremely, extremely important. And so thanks to Fayette Alliance for this education, because I was sitting in here and learned so much. So thanks. And then what's next? We almost have our bid set ready from the architect, ready to go. So once we have that, we'll put that out to a few general contractors, and hopefully pricing, is in line with what we're projecting. Lock in our funding sources, secure some of the retail tenants. So again, I would say if anyone knows anyone looking for a space that this could work, please mention the Railyard and send them my way. And then as we move forward, breaking ground and construction, that would be extremely exciting. And let's get this thing built and leased out. So yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you listening to me. Thanks. So I spent a lot more time than I would like to have done in spreadsheets and trying to figure out how all the numbers can make sense in a way that it can provide a result that a bank would finance, because that's essentially what it comes down to, right? It could be the greatest plan, could get approved, but if I can't find somebody to lend the money because they don't think they're going to get paid, then it's never going to happen. So 80% is what's considered the higher end of affordability. Typically, somewhere from 60 to 120 of the area median income often falls under this workforce housing. So this is kind of this affordable / workforce housing, and 80% AMI, as it currently stands, was the city saying, okay, your one-bedroom units need to rent, they can't cost more than $1,000 a month. So I plug that into my spreadsheet and do all of that and figure out, okay, if we can keep those 12 units at $1,000 a month, this thing can still make sense. But you start messing around with too many of these numbers, and then suddenly things quickly get scary. So hopefully that answers it. But it's tricky to do this without, and not to go too far in the weeds, but when you see the affordable housing developments that are done, like on Newtown Pike, for example, or on Meadowthorpe, the federally funded housing, they are majority affordable, and also they have to usually be across a much wider income level. So the rents there have to be a lot lower. But those end up funding a lot more of the project. So it's uncommon that you see much affordable housing built into non-low-income housing tax projects, which is why this is a little bit different, because this is kind of a slightly different approach than what you usually see. I found the greatest inspiration came from a Facebook group called Neighborhood Development. And it's folks from all over the country who are doing similar types of projects as this. And they're very willing to share their lessons, what they've learned, and break down costs. And I think how a lot of this even got started was just Blake told me about it, and then I got in there and just posted something like, this is what I'm thinking about doing. One of the guys messaged me, and we started talking, and the next thing he'd like sketched up a site plan. So it was the perfect resource for what I was looking for. There are also some good, there's a group called the Incremental Development Alliance, and some of the similar folks in that group, and I went to a workshop that they put on, and they share a lot of their kind of past projects. It's a lot of the folks in that group are kind of practicing developers, so their insights are extremely important. So that was where I would say my best insights have come from. And then the local group, the local people. The Lexington Urbanists was a great group to be involved with, and obviously Fayette Alliance, and then just Develop Lex podcast was extremely helpful. So hearing from those folks in the industry and learning from their experiences was great. I mean, it felt like I didn't have to meet all of those people because I just listened to them talking for an hour. So, or if I did meet them, I felt like I had good context to be able to go and go in more depth and feel like you've kind of, you've already can kind of just get straight in and have a more efficient meeting. But so that was, more of that kind of media, I would say, than books. What comes to mind there would be how Louisville has a more active brownfield redevelopment group. So if sites, in redeveloping industrial sites, they do have their own internal funds to, whereas I was trying to go after some of the federal and state funds, they do have city funds that can help with that. So that would have been great, something like that. I do think that the city is great that it even has some programs that I can work with, like the Infill Infrastructure Fund, and the Affordable Housing Fund particularly. But they were the main things. I do believe that there are some states that have their own affordable housing tax credit programs that you don't have to apply through the federal route, but there are just so many, as you touched on, there are so many consultants that need to get paid, there are so many reports that need to get filed, and they don't even want a first-time developer to even apply for those. You just physically can't, so how do you even start? So the barrier to entry for like conventional affordable housing was really tough to get over that. So, but there are some folks in town who do that, and I met with them, and they were helpful. But no, I would say I probably maybe on the access to financing, I think that we probably have a less, what did I say? There weren't a huge amount of resources to be able to go to in terms of borrowing money on this. So I think if there were other programs available that could help tap it into low interest financing, that could help make, especially in the current current market we're in, anything that could help tap into that would be helpful.